I want to speak about Donald Trump federalizing the police down there in D.C., which is a bunch of nonsense. Now, this comes on the heels of that Doge employee claiming and alleging that he was the victim of an attempted carjacking, which I ain't buying. See, Trump ain't nothing more than a racist white supremacist, and he's using this as a smokescreen to go in there to D.C., to the black community and be, overly police. And I can see brothers and sisters, being stopped left and right, gaffled up, stop and frisk, which is a bunch of nonsense for absolutely nothing at all. And now they only doing this in, as of now, predominantly black cities that got a black mayor, but I can see them trying to roll this thing out all the way around the board if ain't no pushback or resistance given to it. You know what I mean? Because they just using us in our communities as of now as, the guinea pig to see what they can and can't get away with. I don't see them trying to roll this out, to them white enclaves where they got the white supremacists out there running amok and doing God knows what. And the statistics in D.C. as far as crime say that the crime is at an all-time low. Now they also trying to roll this thing out to places like Baltimore, Chicago, and even Oakland and a few other ones, if I ain't mistaken. You know what I mean? But Trump ain't nothing more than a racist white supremacist, pandering to his white supremacist support base, because Trump knows and the white supremacists know that the fastest way to get things, enacted and laws passed is to paint this false narrative of there being some black boogeyman running around committing crimes, you know what I mean, which couldn't be further from the truth. This is why I ain't for either party, the right wing or the left wing, because both of them got seeds sown into that very fabric of both of the parties of anti-black racism. So I got the audio and the video of this nonsense to where though, Trump trying to run amok and, federalize these police, and cities like D.C. he's already doing it, but he's trying to roll it out to Baltimore, Chicago, you name it. And we're going to walk through and talk about this thing how we normally do, family. Fair use.
For the first time in U.S. history, the government has taken control of police in D.C. President Trump also says he's deploying hundreds of National Guard troops across D.C. this week, claiming there's a spike in violent crime there. But D.C.'s mayor, Muriel Bowser, pushed back with data showing that crime has dropped 26% in the last year. Yesterday, the president also claimed that Baltimore is another city where crime is out of control.
We have other cities also that are bad, very bad. You look at Chicago, how bad it is. You look at Los Angeles, how bad it is.
And they say Baltimore crime is low. Baltimore mayor about to get on here and talk, once I let the video play a little bit more, but their crime is even low. So what is this all about? I feel it's, a targeted attack on the black community, and him using the false narrative of, that Doge employee being attempted carjacking as a way in a vessel to do so. But let's continue.
We have other cities that are very bad. New York has a problem. And then you have, of course, Baltimore and Oakland. We don't even mention that anymore. They're so far gone. We're not going to let it happen. We're not going to lose our cities over this.
But Mayor Brandon Scott is pushing back. Amy Kawada in your corner with his response.
Baltimore Mayor Brandon Scott says the national headlines do not reflect what's happening here in Baltimore, pointing to the recent data showing the city's progress in reducing crime. In a statement,
and let's just say for shits and giggles, there was crime going on in these cities, which it ain't, over policing with the feds, that ain't the answer. There's already heavily policing in these communities and areas. Most of the problems that go on in our community, 99.9% of the problems and issues that go on in the black community are done from an economic standpoint. There not being no resources, jobs, and aid in these communities, which directly links and traces back to systematic racism, white supremacy. But let's continue.
Statement posted on social media. He went on to say, quote, Baltimore is the safest it's been in over 50 years. Homicides are down 28% this year alone, reaching the lowest level of any year on record. He also pointed out that violent crime is at historic lows in cities nationwide, attributing this success to the leadership of mayors who collaborate with law enforcement, the legal system, and communities. On CNN last night, Scott criticized President Trump's decision to place the D.C. police force under federal control and deploy the National Guard to help reestablish law and order to tackle homelessness and crime. He suggested that it's an attempt to distract from current issues.
We all know this is a distraction. The president does not want the American people to hear him answer questions about the economy or the Epstein files, or that the country has lost its state in the world, or that we're a less safe nation because of some of the actions that he has taken. And what he's doing is dog whistling through these right-wing propaganda and, quite frankly, racist.
There's something else I want to add, family, is that, Trump is attempting to go into the Smithsonian Museum, and I'm going to paraphrase on this one, but quote unquote, make sure it's in line with his, directives, which means he ain't doing nothing but going into the Smithsonian Museum and trying to, dilute and whitewash black history and, make it more sanitized and easily, more digestible for the dominant white society, which is a bunch of nonsense, but let's continue.
Viewpoints that they have about these cities and trying to convince the American people that what they know is not true.
Now, it's important to note the White House cannot federalize the Baltimore Police Department like what's happening in D.C.
See, when they paint the false narrative of there being crime in D.C., Baltimore, Chicago, this is used by the white supremacists. They just using it under the guise of that being a city. But in all actuality, they talking about black folks. So this is a dog whistle to white supremacists that black folks are running around committing these crimes, which is a bunch of nonsense, and it couldn't be further from the truth. But let's continue.
Right now, the most the administration can do is to deploy National Guard troops to the city. For now, reporting on your corner, I'm Amy Kawada for CBS News Baltimore.
But in closing, family, we the FBA family, we need to be giving pushback and resistance to this, because if we let this rock, they're going to try to roll this thing out, all the way across the board, all the way around the board. Just my thoughts on the matter. Peace.